I Love Mortgage Brokering, Episode 8.
If you're prepared to take your mortgage business to the next level, there is only one place to go. I Love Mortgage Brokering with your host, Scott Peckford.
Hi, Broker Nation. I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Glen Kelleway. Glen is a mortgage broker with Mortgage Architects based out of Maple Ridge. He's been a broker for 11 years. How's it going to Glen today?
Hey, it's going great. It's going great. Got a referral in from some marketing we were doing, and last night, last thing, so keep my fingers crossed. That's a $700,000 or $800,000 Vancouver mortgage, so we'll go on that. My assistant is just we're talking to the client and getting the rest of the data right now.
It's nice. Your work's being done while you're talking to me.
You know what? That's one of the keys to success is knowing to do what you do best and write a check for the rest.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna borrow that line for sure. Okay, how about first tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Okay, I got in a little bit about myself. I'm 53 years old. I sat the real estate course about 22 years ago in British Columbia. It's the real estate mortgage brokers, real estate salesperson mortgage sub-brokers course. And from there, I didn't do anything with it. My wife was in real estate, working for a firm as the marketing person for a project marketing firm, which ultimately became Dan Hewland or any project marketing, responsible for the sale of a couple of buildings here in Hong Kong in one day, entire 200 plus units. So I didn't start in real estate that way. My mom had been in real estate for years. It didn't feel like it was the right thing, so I went into the tech industry. And I've got great construction experience and all this academics and blue collar, and then I was in sales and got downsized a couple of times towards the end of the dot-bomb, and I said, you know what, I'm tired of working for other people. I'm going to go back and look at real estate. My daughter, who is now 12 years old, was just a couple of months old when I got downsized, and I've been working with a guy on a construction site who'd ultimately gone back and become a mortgage broker. I touched base with him, and he says, come on over to this side of the fence. Don't do that real estate agent thing. And so I went and relicensed, sat down, wrote the course, relicensed, and joined a small boutique firm on Vancouver Island. And that's how I got to where I am now. They decided they didn't want any external brokers. They just wanted in-house people on the sales team for them. And I ended up with Mortgage Architects at that point. I guess it's about 8 years ago now.
And so tell me a little bit about your office. So how's your setup you got for assistants and that sort of thing?
Office setup here. We have actually chosen to work from what I call as my home. We custom basically ripped apart the basement and turned it into the potential space for up to 8 workstations here. But we've only got 3 of us working full-time here. That would be Serena, who is my licensed underwriter, and Heather, my spouse, who is also licensed but does marketing, administrative, files to head office, does a lot of stuff. They clear the deck so I can talk on the phone, essentially.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's like you have it's great to have a team, that's for sure. If you really want to get any kind of traction or volume in this business, you cannot do everything yourself. That's what I've been noticing talking to other brokers. So,
and you have to have some sort of processes in place.
And you're I know I've known you for a while, and I know you're very process driven, so I'm excited to chat with you about these processes. But before I get to that, last question about the business is, so A-B split. So what is your split of A to B business, and has it changed in the last year?
Oh, A to B business. B business probably runs about 7 or 8, about 5 to 10%. And you know what? That's something that I've really got to track. I'm looking at doing more metrics this year, which sounds crazy because a lot of people that know me know I'm pretty geeky with spreadsheets and stuff. But I actually haven't broken it down, so I'm actually looking to break that down and look at more metrics and figure out where we need to put a little bit more energy into one thing or another, renewals or what's our conversion ratio on our pre-approvals, what's our conversion ratio on our approvals that come first pass into our data. But the AB business, B is where I think I'm going to put some more focus in going forward, considering CMHC's recent rule changes.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that you didn't give me a number like 5.72 because you're very precise. So I'm actually a little bit stunned that you didn't have that like quick. So
I've got it. I just got to extract it. I know what my volume is per lender based on some worksheets, so I can go back and look at that. I'm not looking at those numbers right now. What I got to look at is how much energy are we going to put out to generating dollars. So we're starting to you're starting to look at things that we're doing. Say, I got someone who does a great job, sends me a referral. I send him out a thank you card with 5 cards that are personally labeled. Referral it's just referred by John Smith on the card. Thanks for referred. Anyway, so John's on the card. I send John that. I send him a Timmy's card, $10, $20, whatever, and that. So we've got we're trying to do things in campaigns and chunks to say, okay, after the year, because my database will then track that. After a year, how many dollars did we spend? How many cards did we spend out? How many pieces of business did we get back? So trying to put some metrics around that. Treat this more as a business as opposed to a job.
Right. You got to get figure out your return on your investment for those different marketing strategies.
Yeah.
So before we dig into your story, I always like to start with a success quote. So I love quotes. You already used 2 actually that I wrote down. One of them was "Do what you do best and write a check for the rest." And then you said, well, it wasn't really a quote, but you said the dot bomb. And I never actually heard it. I've never heard it called that. I know it's probably everywhere, but I was like, oh, I love that language. So share a quote that has impacted your business. And then if you could, give me an example of when you've applied this quote to your business.
I've come up with a few. Recently I saw Chris Hadfield speak and got a signed copy of a book. I read through his book, and one of the things he referenced and it has to do with flying. Attitude determines your altitude. Attitude is where your nose is pointing on the plane. If the nose is pointing down, you're going to be losing altitude. If it's pointing at the horizon, you're going to maintain. If it's pointing above the horizon, then you're going to be climbing, assuming you have enough of everything else, power and all of the other things that you'd need. So attitude determines altitude. So trying to say, you know what, as marketing to that realtor, they said no, they're going to go work with a couple of bank reps. Sorting jaws. There's a sales expression that comes out. I've got lots of them. Some will, some won't. So what next? And you've got to just release and let go and get past the fact that someone didn't do business with you, they didn't take your mortgage, and find out how you can make lemonade from lemons. And it's an expression I use with a lot of clients. I said, and I try and put things into pictures with clients. I said, it's not that you can't buy. You're at a red light. A red light is only there for a period of time, and then you get to go ahead. You might not be able to go on the street you want because there's some traffic jam or roadblock, but we will get you to your destination. So attitude determines altitude. What you're thinking about is going to determine, and out of that, what you're thinking about is going to determine what's going to come out of the person's mouth. So if you think negative things about the file and the problems and all this, I guarantee you, the borrower is going to come up with something or that's coming out of your thing in your head. There's a couple of other ones that I really, really like, and I said this to Ted Cadigan many, many years ago, and it has to do with what we do in our business. 30 seconds of documentation saves me 30 minutes of aggravation. Actually, it's more like 3 to 4 hours or days. But we do it ourselves, and the underwriters do it to us back. That you say, so was this good enough? And they say yes. Well, you got to be clear, and that's something rather there. So, you know what? I could give you lots of quotes, but attitude determines altitude is the one that's on my cell phone right now when I pop up my screen.
And where did you get that one from again?
It was a quote out of Chris Hadfield's book, Astronaut's Guide to Living on Earth, I think is what the title was. I should know it, but...
That's all. I love that. There's quite a bit of good stuff in there. I love the metaphor of the stoplight, and it's red, and you get to go down. You're really good at painting word pictures and helping people kind of understand things that that can be emotional. But I've always liked hearing and I love metaphors, so I'm a geek that way. So
yeah, in my database, so I try. If I realize the person's not the person I spoke to last night is a very director personality, they're not a relator or socializer, so I've marked their file with that. So next time I'm engaging that person in conversation, I'm going to kind of tighten up what it is we do and what we say.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me that you have you have them labeled as the personality type. So what I want to move to next is a failure. I know that for me, I've made some mistakes over the last time being an entrepreneur and being a mortgage broker. Can you share a time that you had made a mistake and then the lesson that you'd learned from it?
I thought about that, and there's lots of little things that fail, that we do that are failures, and in each and every day. And let me just think about this for a moment. With respect to failures, I would say probably the one of my failures that held me back for a period of time was getting the right assistant and not being willing to fire someone right away, and taking a long time to fire. I had an assistant who took basically three tries to get the mortgage broker's course done, and ultimately I hired Serena in here, and she passed the course in 3 months. And then I said, I need you to underwrite files, and I started training her. It took me 2.5 to 3 years. She's about 80% or 90% now. She can process everything, but there's so much, Scott, as you know, in this industry that just takes years and years and files to look at, because I relate back to Chris Hadfield's book again. It's finding the little things that are going to screw up and then blow up the deal. We're not astronauts. We're not going to blow up on re-entry or going into space, but our deal's going to blow up, and then we're going to lose relationships and lifetime value of clients. So it takes a long time to learn all of the bits in this business.
So if you were to boil it, that's a great lesson. Actually, I've done that myself, hiring people, hiring the wrong people. So what's your advice to somebody that's thinking about hiring or in the process of hiring? What would you say to them?
Well, I'm not the expert on that, and Heather and I had worked on that, and I'd relied on Heather to help out with that process because she'd done a lot of management in various areas. But I think right now, if I was to go and hire someone, I would probably, I have a business coach, so I would probably get my business coach to go in. I'd probably spend a few $100 when I shortlisted it down to a few people. It's worth thousands of dollars to you if you screw up. It's so important, and you can find the right person, but you've got to find the right personality match. As we all know in this industry, we hire people who look like us, walk like us, talk like us, and we've got another person that's going out to generate another piece of business. We've got to hire people who like to do certain key aspects, and not necessarily like the Gerber model. We've got to build that in place. Or the Keller Williams Millionaire Real Estate is another book out there that talks about building a team, and the team has specific roles and responsibilities, and they do what they like to do. I like to get on the phone and talk. If I could get on the phone and work numbers out and do stuff, but I'm also the geek in the office. So when something crashes or something other, it's okay. But it's not what generating dollars, so I outsource that. So lots of things there, but biggest thing is when you go to hire, get some additional external help to hire. I think that would be my next hire we do. I will hire someone else to help me hire someone in my office.
Yeah, that's good advice. There's a proverb that I love. It says, many advisors bring success. And so it's this idea that no one has that's part of the reason I like doing this podcast, is because you talking to other people, getting other inputs will give you a better outcome and just a clearer picture of what. And you're right, a bad hire could, the time wasted and the money, and man, it can be a very painful thing.
It's worth at least half of their annual salary if it's a screw up.
Oh, for sure.
And it doesn't mean that they've blown up a file for you. It's the rehiring process. It's the time you have to take out to go through all of that interview process and then the training that goes in. And most people don't think that this industry requires training, but you and I both know how many years did it take you to get to know a good chunk of the business. And then if you want to talk about construction mortgages, maybe you don't. If you want to talk about commercial mortgages, you want to talk about private business, to know this business well and on a big scale, you have to do the business. And you can't just do one mortgage every 6 months or something. You've got to do a bunch of them in a bunch of geographic areas to gain that incremental little bit of it's like taking the kid on a soccer pitch that's got is an 8 out of 10 on there. To get him to an 8.5 or 9 is a lot more difficult. There's a lot more work to refine their skills or martial arts, as you know, to get to there. But to take them from a white belt up to the first level, they just have to learn a few skills, and that's easy to do. But getting them to the top end, that's more and more work. It's just numbers.
Yeah, it does. It definitely takes longer to go from understanding something at 80% to 90 or 95, just because of the amount of time and effort. So I'm going to switch. This actually segues perfectly into the next question, because it sounds like hiring somebody, you should have a process. I know that successful mortgage brokers have processes. They have administrative, that processes that help for the paperwork. They have sales processes. What I want to ask you about is an administrative process that you have and that you've tweaked. Because I've noticed that mortgage brokers will adjust if they're good. So they'll make adjustments because things don't work always the same way, and you've got to be willing to pivot. And so can you share with us an example of an administrative process that you tweaked and what sort of outcome you got?
Yeah, one of the things we had, we store all the documents on our server. So we store them here and then our office can access them. Got a fast network in the office. But the thing I was finding was everyone had their own hodgepodge way of naming files and of setting up the actual file system. So I set up a way to do it, and I've written down the process. But the problem is when something's written down and you give someone several steps to do it, no one will follow exactly what you've set. I mean, even I and you might not follow our own process properly. But if you build a tool to do that, we built a tool to take a master set of folders, which has got, and basically it's got an admin folder for everything that's going to go to head office. It's got task 1, an out box, a task 2, and an out 2, and then it's got a raw docs folder. That sounds like a lot of stuff. And then it's got our worksheets in there and our underwriting sheets and everything else. So I sent one of my techs on a path to do that. He wrote this tool for me. I click one button on my taskbar. It pops up. And it's already preloaded with where the template folder is. Grabs the template folder, labels it up in such a way that I can look at any one of those folders. I can have a dozen or 2 dozen folders open on my desktop, like right now. If I click on it, and I can see which folder belongs to John Smith, and then I can open up a bunch of worksheets, because we use worksheets to process things before we actually dump all the information into Filogix. A little bit more time, but a lot more plasticity, and I can actually work that much better in a screen share when I do a meeting with a client online. So 3 things that we've done with that. One is we standardized how we link documents to the actual file. So when I go to a client's record in my contact management system, I can launch a folder that's got all their documents from 2014 or 2012 or 2009. I can launch that. The folders are all the same structure. They're all named the same sort of way. The files are all named the same sort of way. And now when the client sends me documents, 50-page fax, or scans up at the documents, and it's got some goofy number on it that has nothing to do with the payroll statement, we have a standardized way of naming that. So we created an Excel spreadsheet that just basically you plunk in the person's name at the top, and it fills in all of the things. You can go payroll statement, John, so it says income, John, and when I look down the list of documents, 20, 30, 40, 50 documents in the client's process documents folder, I'll see the stuff that's to be signed, TBS. Those are documents that we maybe got a raw mortgage approval in, or there's something else I need them a credit authorization. It's there. And once it's processed, it's up in a section, and I can literally glance through any folder going back over the last 5 plus 10 years. And I go back and I can find the same sequence of documents. So it becomes idiot-proof. What we found was, if we want to go back, client calls me up 2 years later and says, oh, by the way, I want to do this. I had to go back and try and find their other documents. And we were spending probably 2 to 3 hours a month just going and finding old documents and trying to figure out where they were and opening them up, and then getting interrupted and going to something else and then going back and trying to find it. Now, Scott, I tell you, that has been one of the biggest godsends to have a standardized naming procedure for your documents. It's probably the best thing that I've ever done.
You know, actually, I remember you told me about that a while ago, and I've kind of done it, not to the degree that you have, but I created a templated folder that I have I put different documents in the folders, and when I get a new client, I just copy and rename it, and then it basically does it all for me. But yeah, I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of time wasted for yourself or your administrators, or you just look like, you know, when a client calls, you want to look like you know what you're talking about, and if you're having to dig around looking for things, and it just doesn't make you a professional if you can't find stuff.
And literally, client called me up, and because they've got multiple rental properties, I mean, you and I both know how many people out there, this is blowing my own horn, but how many people out there can go click on it and go, okay, so you still own the property on Smith Street, there's one on Jones, and I can basically start a new worksheet, grab the old stuff, we can update, you sold that one, and in that phone call, with very little prep time, I can give the client some sort of information based on what was 2 years ago. It just like very, very quick. So that in itself, being able to get to the data and update the data makes it so much faster. I mean, if we do that as brokers, even halfway, the bank can't touch us. I mean, the banks have to go in, you have to book an appointment, you have to do all of that sort of stuff. I mean, it just makes us that much better.
Right. Yeah, I love it. So anybody listening, if you don't have a process, we highly recommend that you start to develop one, and the sooner the better, so that 10 years from now, you can go back and find that, whatever you need. So I just want to change gears from the administrative to a sales process. So just talk about a sales process that you've recently been using, and maybe an adjustment you made and what sort of outcome you got.
Okay, a couple of years ago, we had our conference in Calgary, and Greg Williams was out there, and he was doing his stuff, and I know I needed to change up my sales process, so I got to give him a touch of credit there. It's taking some of his ideas, and I think it's like anything. Nothing's absolutely new out there, but some people, well, this one, the teacher will appear when the student is ready, is a proverb. I think it's an Asian proverb. But the idea right now, so I looked at what was happening, and we changed up our sales process a little bit more with the help of Serena on board. Client calls in, we get basic data, we schedule I do a quick fact find if they've got 5 or 10 minutes. It's more about a relationship building, finding out where they are, finding out their hot points, finding out if they are working with their bank, if they're pre-approved. I don't care. I mean, I used to bother me, but you know what? It's a potential for doing business. You got to know how to handle it. And in dealing with that, I set up the expectation as to what we're going to do. What is our value proposition in that 5 or 10 minutes? Hand them off to Serena. Serena does her magic with them. They become very impressed with her follow through and follow up. And then we go back and we do then go back and do a bit of a light strategy session. We talk about getting them pre-approved, what their capacity is to buy, because I don't talk about that in that fact find. I say, well, get our documents in. I want to see what your documents are. I want to know. I don't want to guess. I've seen that go bad too many times. Not in my files. People come in crisis to me because someone else has made a mistake. So I'm trying to fix someone else's mistake. So we don't like to make mistakes. And I impress clients with that. So in doing that, I do a quick fact find. I explain that there's exit penalties. We'll do a strategy session when it comes close to them buying. I'm talking about a pre-approval going to a purchase. So we send them out shopping. I find out if they're going to go to their bank. I use Greg Williams shopping around form and basically set them up there to go into their bank and ask them all of those questions. And I usually throw a couple more in there and ask them to do that. And then I always, if they are going to go into their bank, I follow up with them after they've gone to the bank and say, how did that go? Or how did it go with the call center? Were they able to answer the questions? Were they able to talk to you about that? How are they going to support you long term? So that's part of the sales process. It's called a wedge technique. And then what we do is and then ultimately when they do find their place, we sit down and we go through what are the key options for the clients. We usually look at a long and a short, explain the options, pro, con, break-even point if you're going to take the long versus the short, look at variable, look at risk, and then I go through a cash flow analysis and I talk to them about where their cash flow is. I talk to them about that process. So it's not just here's your hamburger, eat it. It's okay, is this right for you? Should you be having the salad or the fries? I'm talking about helping them make good decisions. One of my favorite things to talk to clients about is, I had a client call in, and I knew they came from a certain referral source, and there was a strong connection to their congregation, and they had a big tithe to church, $900 a month. And then just out of intuitiveness, I said, are you giving money elsewhere? What else? Other money's going out. These guys could buy an $850,000 or $900,000 property based on income and equity. And they're putting $900 out to their congregation and $1,000 out to their parents to help them, support them. That's $1,900. Now, the tithe is about a 40% tax credit, if I remember correctly. You and I both know that they wouldn't be able to, if they're buying at the maximum level based on income and down payment, they're going to be cash crunched. So we gave them the idea as to where they could be comfortable. And that's the other thing I do with the value. So that's in that consulting session. And that seems to that's creating bond. I can't think of maybe one deal in the last 3 or 4 years that I have lost at the lawyer's office. I haven't lost one. So
I love that. That's a brilliant. I've been thinking. I've talked to Greg Nowick about this, and he does the cash flow analysis. And I think because the number that we get, the GDS, TDS limits really don't factor in what other priorities someone has, and so it's very arbitrary in the sense that, well, you can have 39%, GDS if your credit is appropriate. And to me, looking at the cash flow will really then, like in this, I'm telling you that's something I'm gonna implement. So I appreciate you repeating this. I've heard it 2 or 3 times and I'm a slow learner, but I'm totally gonna implement a cash flow analysis. I think it's that important.
I got a government worker moving from somewhere here in Maple Ridge over to Vancouver Island, and they're moving over there. He's got a full-time job. Wife doesn't. She's been working as a contractor in the same industry, same area that they're in. We can jam their ratios right up because I know she's going to walk into a $40,000 a year job over there. She just doesn't have it guaranteed. So even if she earns $20,000, so I can show them what that is. I mean, even I'll say this right now, it's a great idea. I got a couple going out. I know wife's earning $70,000. Husband's earning $40,000. She's going off on mat leave, and I show them what happens to the cash flow when she goes from $70,000 to $24,000 or $25,000 or $26,000, which is the EI income. I said, you guys are going to be cash crunched. You guys got to have some money set aside. Here's the money, and then my spreadsheet will allow them to. I talk about trickling in $200 to $300 a month, or $400 or $500 to get their ratios to balance. So I said, if you have this contingency fund, you'll be able to manage. You might not need all of that because you're not buying lunches and other things and paying for vehicles if you're home. But I tell you got diapers, you got other things there. So we talk about all of those things. We talk about taking vacations, putting money away, and having some comfort. It's not happening out there. I mean, it's not happening for a large percentage of the population to understand. They don't understand money.
This is yeah, I totally agree. This is why I love the thing about being a mortgage broker is that if you do it right and if you take the time to educate clients, and we definitely, to me, nothing against our bank brethren, but I really think that brokers, if they're doing it right, can do a better job because we have more time also to spend with the client, and with the focus that we can focus on just the cash flow and the mortgage and not have to worry about car loans and RSPs and all these other things that they have to focus on. So, but what you're talking about, obviously looking at someone's lifestyle, really segues into my next question, which is more personal for you. But so how do you run your busy mortgage practice and manage a family and keep time for everything?
Well, you have kids, I have kids, we both get involved with stuff. We started late in life, having kids, just running into the 40 years old bracket. So the thing I said to myself is, I'll take a lower remuneration to have bring on staff here, and maybe Heather doesn't work 40 hours a week; she works 20 or 25, and I work probably more than that because I do appointments from 8:30 to 9 o'clock at night. I coach soccer. I said I was going to get involved with my kids. I'm coaching in 2 spring teams right now, a U11 boys team and a U11 13, U11 14 girls team I'm assisting. Last year I coached 1 team but tried to make it to every one of that. So we're going 5 days a week. Coming this fall, we'll be going 5 practices a week and 2 games. It's crazy busy. So I actually picked up, I'm playing on a mom's and dad's soccer team. You know what? You got to get out there. You got to go and work in the garden. You got to do this stuff. You got to find some sort of balance. You got to realize that you can work your fingers to the bone, sort of deal. But all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, to quote from a movie. If you know the reference.
I know the movie.
Yeah. So you've got to figure out, and that's the one thing I said to myself, is find some balance, because you will never, ever, ever. When you're in the latter years of your life, saying, I'm glad I took that extra hour and didn't spend it with my kid, I spent it working on that file. The client will never appreciate you. They'll appreciate you, but it's only for an instant. Your kid, you've got to give your kids and your family your presence. That's physical presence as opposed to dollars presence. And that to me is most important. Volunteer, do community stuff. I chartered a Rotary Club back in 2005 when my kids were young, but I can't make the weekly meetings and all of the commitments there because I got involved with helping my kids out with sports.
Right, and then it kind of, it's a great way to start to build your own network, meet people, but also at the same time, hey, it's not just about meeting people, it's about doing time with your kid. And I know that for me, the times that I've volunteered and got involved in things, there's always business that just kind of happens by accident from it. And so it's like, oh, that's nice, but ultimately the goal is to be, have that time with your kids and or whatever that you're helping out with. I totally agree. It's a great way to spend, an afternoon or an evening.
I'm there because of my kids, so it's not altruistic. But I'm also there as coaching. I've learned so much about coaching, which relates back to the mortgage business indirectly, that either my staff, working with my spouse, which most people would say, do a Dr. Phil moment, how's that working for you? All of that stuff relates back. So if you can look at every moment that you do something or other and find out where there's, relating back to Chris Hadfield, what can go wrong, what did go wrong, what can I do to change that? Is it going to happen again? Do we need to do something different next time so it doesn't happen? So we get the outcome that we would like, more of the outcome. So it's there. But coaching has taught me a lot. And I've learned a lot from other people. Just like you and I, when we go to conferences, we learn a lot from other people. And I like what you're doing here because I'm going to listen to all those podcasts.
Cool, awesome. Well, great. You'll be. I'll let you know when they'll be up very soon. So I'm going to move to the rapid fire questions. So these ones you can answer with a little shorter answer if you like.
Sure.
So the first question is, what do you think is the number one thing holding back most mortgage brokers from being successful?
I would say releasing control. They got to hire staff. They got to hire the right staff.
What is the one? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, releasing control. They want to be they're the control freaks on the file, and you know what I mean. They've got to manage every little bit. They've got to be able to train people, trust them. Just like you're on the, I relate back to coaching. You got to trust your defense is going to get it. You got to trust the forward's going to get it to where it is. You can't all crowd that. You can't all crowd that ball. You got to give some space. So go and go. If it's a, and this is where I'm getting soccer. Move to open. Pick up the phone. Go doing something else. Let your admin do what they're supposed to do. Give them instructions. You can do it in 10 minutes. It might take them 20.
You're like a metaphor master, Glen. I've always thought, like, people who know me think I like metaphors a lot, but dude, you're it's ridiculous. So the next question is, what habit do you think has made you successful?
What is making me more successful is doing what I do best, and putting and basically establishing the paradigm, setting the benchmarks, and be aware that when you delegate, you also give up control. So you need to do that be mindful about it. Basically, check in and make sure what you've assumed is happening is happening.
I love it. And so do you have an internet, so I know this is a great question for you, but is there like a software program or internet resource you use to make your business more successful?
I got using out of the .com. We're doing some database stuff, and I ended up getting plugged into a piece of tool called Goldmine. Goldmine's a contact management system like Act or Maximizer. I had outsourced my tech to add fields, and eventually said, "The heck with this." Actually, I used an expletive, and I've gone and added probably about 150 fields to that, and I've had my tech write automatic processes to do stuff. Our birthday campaign will be going out. I've got some other marketing campaigns specifically to realtors. I know realtors who are involved. I know whether they refer, like, there's a lot of stuff. It's GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You've got to figure out what you need to know and whether it's worth doing that. But having the plasticity to basically say, did I follow up with this person on a phone call on their birthday app, and be able to just go through and see that without trying to search some weird history. Like, the tools are all around us. We just have to figure out how to use it. Is it a hammer or a screw? What is it can we use, and do we need it? That's the other thing, because I'll get geeked out on stuff. Waste too much time. Right.
So if you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
You know what? I would say that's my weak point. I said I haven't read a whole lot of books recently. I bought them here with the intention to read. The one thing, you know what, I would, just as far as a Canadian hero is concerned, I would think I'd go read Chris Hadfield's book. It's an easy read. You can knock it off in 2 or 3 days. And for us in this industry, it focuses in on sweating the small stuff. For astronauts, it's what's going to kill them. And then getting a perspective on balance in life, and Chris gives you a few anecdotal things in there for family and whatnot that points back to do's and don'ts. That would be, he refers to being a plus, a neutral, or a minus. In any given situation, are you a minus, you're taking away, are you neutral, you're not adding or that, or are you being a plus? And certain times you have to be a plus, and certain times you need to be neutral. But you definitely, 99.9% of the time, don't want to be a minus.
Right, that's good. And then, so the last question, which is one of my favorites. So let's say you decided to sell your business, sold your clients, and then you moved across the country to another place with the same size as Maple Ridge, and you think, oh, what was I thinking? I want to start a mortgage brokerage again, or I want to start in the mortgage business. What would be like the first 3 things that you would do if you were starting from scratch without your contacts and without your clients?
First three things, I find out where I can do networking. Get plugged into local networking groups, whether it's Rotary or whatnot. Not that you're going to get business directly out, but you get to know the lay of the land. Realtors are a great source of business. They can be a vexation to our spirits, but they are a great source of business. They get it. Financial planners would be probably that, if that's three. The fourth thing would be, besides knowing who and the lenders and the whatever the B and stuff, and then I chase down bank managers and stuff like that, and but basically focusing in on the B business, the off-cast from the bank, and build that database. Use all of that stuff there to go and build a database over the first 90 days of people you can phone up and get them to remember you.
Okay, that's good advice. Glen, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, and I love this. I'm going to listen to this podcast again because I know there's more stuff and I need to take out, and when I'm writing notes, I can't keep up and pay attention at the same time. So the last question is, are you guys hiring right now?
You know what? I'm looking at bringing sub-brokers on into here. I've got some bandwidth to do some training. Certainly we have some bandwidth in here that we can help them process files. They can go bird dog the files. I've got 2 or 3 people I've been talking to, but nothing has gelled yet. So far I've just been running this myself, and I may hire, but it's not been my mandate to do that. I've been trying to build a business here internally. And
so where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm the only mortgage broker in the entire world with the last name of Kelleway. That's Kelleway. And I have to say this, until such time as Serena, who is my licensed assistant, takes my nephew's last name, and then there'll be 2 Kelleways in the entire world who are in the mortgage broker business.
There's actually another Peckford in BC. There may be more in other places, but there's a Monica Peckford, so it's pretty funny, but I have no relation to her. So yeah, you'll have 2 Kelleways. So great. Possibly hiring. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. And Broker Nation, if you want to check out the show notes on this or any of the other shows, visit ilovemortgagebrokering.com. Thanks, Glen. Have an awesome day.
Thank you.
If you are prepared to take your mortgage business to the next level, there is only one place to go. I Love Mortgage Brokering with your host, Scott Peckford.
Hi, Broker Nation. If you enjoyed this interview, please take a minute, visit iTunes, and rate this podcast. If you do, you'll get 3 deals in the next month. Okay, that's not true, but I would really appreciate it. Also, I want to invite you to join me on a quest. After every episode, I personally take 5 minutes and think about one thing or one idea I can use to improve my mortgage business. I encourage you to do the same. Over the next 12 months, I plan to do 100 interviews and make 100 improvements. I'm going to track these to see how they impact my business and, more importantly, my bottom line. Visit ilovemortgagebrokering.com and post in the show notes what one thing you plan to do differently after listening to this interview, and check out what other brokers are sharing. Also, if you'd like to connect with me, fire me an email at scott@robyourbank.com. I love hearing from passionate mortgage professionals who are interested in improving their business. Until next time, rock on.